before the people are getting tired of waiting. Awesome. Hello and welcome all together. We are live again to round 2 of TM1 versus Power BI. And today again with Hubert and Christoph, the TM1 pros, and me, the Power BI fanboy. So yeah, a quick recap of the last session. We managed to import the TM1 database into Power BI via OData. And today I even have the possibility to share my screen with Power BI. And this is something I will do now. Here I have the moment. Should be there. Yes, it's loading. My connection is not perfect today. Surprisingly, yes. This is the output of our last session, where we can see that we imported one TM1 data source into Power BI. And yes, as we can see, this is a web data source with some OData tricks inside. Yeah, just waiting for the source. All right. We can see here, and now we have a test server. I think you can deactivate it anytime, Hubert, right? So anyone can see now that this is an has no password.
It's a temporary thing, but
But it's something that's quite okay. And yes, what did we did last time? We managed to import this with a web link and some OData specialities. I excluded it to the relative path to make it possible to refresh it in the Power BI service. The rest is just like you have shown us, Hubert. And I think one great thing last time we struggled about the dimensions, and today when I go to the end, we already have dimensions here. This is it's loading. I'm very sorry for this. Is it? Yeah. As we can see here, we have the value and we have certain dimensions around. So we managed this, what we cannot do in the last session or could not do, to have the dimensions ready, budget and business unit, department, the exchange
now have
rate.
more or less a proper fact table.
Yeah,
yeah.
this is
So, because I think the dimension could be a bit confusing because there's no hierarchy included as far as I can see.
A little bit it is, but yeah, I think not the traditional hierarchy. This is one thing I want to admit here. It's quite unusual from the Power BI perspective when I have such a table, and I already have it here in the front end. So if it keeps being so slow, maybe one of you have to show it. Then, because when I hear the chart of accounts is one parameter in the fact table that is actually a dimension, and there are accounts and also like the composite headlines that are obviously like sums of accounts. And yeah, if we take a closer look, we can see that some accounts belong to some of the structures here. But I think TM1 has this philosophy like one cell, and everything what describes the cell is actually a reference to something.
Yeah, so this is where the tricky thing comes in with tools like Power BI and Tableau and some other ones, where they're relational, right? And you're loading data into a table that doesn't have, the way I express it typically, the same granularity, right? So you're mixing up account level data with aggregation level data in one table. You would never do that in a relational database.
Yeah.
And so that's what's the real issue here, right? And this is, it's just a different type of tooling, right? So you're asking, if you're loading from TM1, I would always load data from the same granularity. And then whatever grouping or ordering or whatever operations you want to do on top of that, you do in Power BI. That's not to say that you can't load aggregated data, right? As long as that aggregated data is again at the same granularity, then it's all fine.
And of course, you can retrieve the relationship model, the data, how the aggregation works in TM1, and you can rebuild it in Power BI, but you have to rebuild it in Power BI.
It depends on, it depends, right? If it is a parent-child hierarchy, or if it is a nicely built hierarchy based on attributes, where the attributes are also stored in TM1, which not every customer does, right? Then you could indeed pull all those attribute values, even in the same table with the granularity, right? Because you can do in a query dimension properties, and you can actually retrieve all those values as well here, if you wanted to.
But still, you have to assign them to the different. You have to do the relationship between the different attributes, as you said. If you have a couple of attributes for a couple of levels, I have to assign them. Yeah, how to say it? Assign them to the different level of the hierarchy. I have to rebuild the hierarchy.
You have to rebuild it in Power BI. Yeah. Hey, let's be honest, Power BI and the other ones I was referring to are not, front ends for a OLAP database, right?
Definitely
There's a specific set of, tooling that really, really does that. But if you need data out of TM1 and you want to augment, or enrich whatever you're doing in Power BI with that data, you sure can.
Yeah, definitely. It gets even more complicated if we have C-level rules in TM1 or stuff like that, or weighted aggregations. So you have to rebuild everything. So yes, I totally agree with you, Hubert.
Yeah.
Power BI and the other ones like our Tableau or ClickView, we will never be a replacement for a proper TM1 front end. But I think what we were showing here is how you can use the REST API and the standard functionality of the REST API to enrich a Power BI report with data from TM1.
Yeah.
And I think one of the constraints you have here is always pulling data with the same granularity.
Yeah, and I think you have to think about the use case. So if the use case is to compare to some actual data, what would be, I think, one of the use cases to compare the sums from the planning in TM1 with some other data, with your Excel sheet, with your some financial systems. Then you can just join by the account and dismiss the aggregations when you have the structure ready.
Yeah, people do very fancy things in tools like Power BI, even with TM1 data. Don't get me wrong, right? But there's a difference between a BI tool, right, which Power BI is at the end of the day as well. You things you do in there, and you're effectively offloading data from TM1 into Power BI, right? Meaning all your underlying model logic is gone, right? From that point onwards, you are then retrofitting any logic that you're putting on top of that data. Right? So that's where you have to understand, how the data model looks like, what data at the same granularity is or is not, and so that you're doing the right thing with the data. Right? But at the end of the day, that's true with every data that you effectively load from anywhere, right? But in
this is
any
something
database, for example, right? Any dimensional database, it's a little bit more so.
Yeah, you always have to keep in mind this. But the takeout is, even if we have like certain intelligent query, like we have this time with all the dimensions, as we can, maybe I can reperform this here. So first we got the values, and then we get the members, and members are actually the kind of dimension, and then we get even the hierarchy here. So how does it look like when you have accounts? This is something might be interesting. Okay. Okay, now nothing special. So you have the chart of accounts, but this is still the like one level. You have the chart of accounts, and then all the cells are the same here. So I have to get some other data from TM1 to get this knowledge about the structure, as you told me, from TM1. Otherwise, I need to have some structure ready. So in the easy part to compare it to some other system or file I have outside of TM1, and I still think it's the most use case. You have the stable TM1 planning system, and you compare it to some more fluent data in the local departments. Then you can just have to know, do I have to join by account? Do I have to join by some structure? And when you know about the data, you can rely on this. What comes here, it's always everything. So it's quite easy for me, like when I think in Power BI, what I did, I removed the quarters, because this was something that's quite easy for me to understand. I don't need quarters or years, I just need the date, because Power BI thinks in date tables, and then now I can add a calendar table in Power BI and run all my time logic I need there. But it's not so easy when it's not like an obvious hierarchy, but a hierarchy like here, and even not a balanced structure, but imbalanced structure. Then I need more information.
Yeah, you
Like
could, of course, when you retrieve the data, you could use MDX to further customize your query. We started with a pretty simple query here to I think to not dive too deep into TM1 specifics here, but we could, of course, if you follow Hubert's rule of always using data with the same granularity, you should retrieve only a certain view where data is all in the proper granularity. So to reduce the amount of data you push into Power BI.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and switching to MDX is very easy, right? So you switch the URL and that first URL we have by simply doing execute MDX. You pass the MDX in the content of that web contents request, and then fire away any MDX that you want to do. The rest is the same, because the structure you're getting back is still a cell set. By the way, cell set is not an invention from TM1. Cell set is modeled 100% after Microsoft's original ODBO guidelines, which was also adopted in XMLA. I happened to be on the standard committee back in those days for those things, so been around a little bit. So this is in TM1. Here in the REST API, we're doing exactly the same thing, exactly the same structure, and what you get back is is similarly formed. In the meantime, when I actually had Christoph have a peek at it, is that I added support for flattening of the JSON results, which means that you really get one object in your collection per data point with all the properties in there, which should make it easier to immediately map that to the table that you're looking at the screen to now. Albeit that the titles of the columns would be different, but you can give them any name you want in Power BI. So by renaming them, right? So that shouldn't be an issue. With that, you could actually then, in your MDX, you can actually ask which additional properties you want returned, which are things like parent name, parent level, but any attributes that are defined in TM1 and stuff like that. You can ask for all of those, and you would get those back as entries in your JSON objects associated to the cells that are being returned.
That would effectively lead to a table with a lot more columns, but then you have all the relevant data for your for building the dimension. Arthur, I think if you have for different level, you have different columns, and then you should be able to build all the dimension hierarchies you need.
Well, so personally, I would probably pull that information separately into a different table, right, and then join that table in Power BI. But yes, you could pull everything if you wanted to from within one MDX if you wanted to as well.
So, but maybe should we go more into the more technical sort of stuff? So. More things are happening on the screen. I think we drifted a bit off topic here. But
I still have a bad sound. So Hubert, you said I may have the wrong micro. Sometimes it happens in streaming.
No, I think Hubert has a wrong microphone.
Okay. Okay. So
I think he's the one providing the technical issues.
Oh yeah, it could be because I was having technical issues getting into here. And on my for some reason my normal mic doesn't work today.
okay. Yeah, I still can understand you quite well. Okay. So great. I think the last thing I can show from this what we already built, I adopted to the Power BI way of thinking to separate to make a fact table from the fact table. It's not special, it's just the same. It's just a reference to the source, and it's still good to have dimensions in Power BI even if it's only one column. This is something to Power BI specific, that it's good to have small table for dimensions. So otherwise, when you filter, it has to go through the whole fact table, even if it's the same, even if it's one column. But this is something really Power BI specific, and I just want to show you can do it. I could have built a star schema out of this one fact table with very simple dimensions, like only one column dimensions.
But you could, of course, divide it into separate calls.
Yeah.
One for each dimension, where you retrieve all the dimension with the relevant properties, like Hubert described, and you could reconnect them.
Yeah.
And couldn't you use parameters in those queries?
Yes, of course. So this is quite the standard for APIs, that I don't pass the password or the user in the code.
I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about maybe to reduce the amount of data you could, for example, if you add an MDX here for your query, and you could use a parameter in the MDX query, and you could retrieve from a filter in your report. You could retrieve different data depending on I don't know, different accounts or different versions.
Yes, I just need to know which part I have to replace with a parameter here. Then we can do it live. This gets quite straightforward.
But should we try MDX here?
Well, I see.
Do you have a working MDX for your planning sample database?
Sure. Yeah. I always use MDX personally.
I to know if it's part of the URL or where do I have to paste
we have to change the URL a bit.
Yeah, so the URL, forget the portion where it says views and up to TM1.execute. That portion we're going to replace.
Okay, this one. This one needs to go, like the budget input details.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the TM1 dot.
Okay. This
So
could be a parameter. Okay, then I can just start by this.
Just delete it. Just delete it.
Okay.
And then change.
We are using a different query now, a different URL.
Yeah, and change it to execute MDX. Oh, actually, the cubes part has to go as well.
Yeah, true.
Wait, which?
Everything after v1 slash.
Okay. This. Okay. Just like this.
Yeah, one of the slashes we still need, I think.
Yeah.
And then we write execute MDX.
Yeah.
MDX all uppercase.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need a body, don't we?
Okay. Then the body has to be here. The body.
Hubert, do we need a body? I think so.
Yeah, we need a body. I'll paste the body in the chat.
Okay. Cool. Then I may.
I
in the private chat, right?
The chat if that worked. The chat doesn't allow me to.
Yeah, I just removed the screen for a short time, and then you sent me something. Great.
Hold on.
Okay.
I can't do it in one go. The chat only allows 250 seconds.
Okay. Yeah.
These two parts together. Put that in the body.
And let's hope there are no extra spaces or special characters.
Actually, that will work again. That's actually going to show a new feature, but I don't think that's fun. You're working against a deaf machine.
Hubert, it's live and recorded, so everything you say and do here will be saved on the internet for all eternity.
.io domain is now public knowledge as well, right? I have to start doing this.
So let's see, but to pass the time, this body, we could, of course, use parameters on.
Yeah, you will see it shortly. I'm
just passing the time till you have copied it properly.
In Power BI you can do some proper MDX, right? So, but in this case it was a JSON object with the MDX. So this one can go directly into the body. And it's just an example. It just happens to be the last example I happen to execute.
But you could use it to retrieve only a smaller portion of the data.
This is a small one.
Yeah, even if you have a large cube and just want to don't want to pull all the data into your Power BI model.
This is the query I got, and
yeah,
I think I'm not doing it permanently, but I think I have to replace the like the brackets. The quotes with double quotes. So otherwise it will not work.
Devil's in the detail.
And yes, it's great, the best editor ever. And
it's pretty straightforward.
Replace all, and then I can just copy it and paste it to this body instead of the body. At least it seems not to make any problems, but now would be interesting. I go back to source and then Right. And then we can, of course, we always can replace parts of this string with some parameters. This is the easy part. After being sure that this kind of PostQuery is actually working. Okay, it's
Yeah, I think
loading.
the biggest
Maybe we have to also to spare some time while it's loading.
I was
This
thinking you could use it to have a near real-time solution for your Power BI report, where you always by changing a filter, it's retrieving the data again from the database.
not really. Then you have to in Power BI you have to have at least a direct query connection, which you cannot do in import mode, and but you need the import mode to use web
data.
data sources.
Okay.
And
So there is
OData.
no way of triggering a new import from a report.
No, not so far as I know. It's not a. You can, of course, trigger like you have a Power Automate button, and then someone clicks and then pushes the data set to Power BI. But it's
Okay.
more like then you also can write a special solution for this if you do it
Okay.
this way.
So there is no easy way of refreshing the data.
But with OData, it's always import mode. It's not common to have like that you can influence the query from the user interface.
Okay, so I could, if I click on refresh in Power BI, it wouldn't trigger the import again. It only would show me the data from the internal Power BI data model.
No, it's yes, from the data model it is, and now we can see we will come back to the question of refreshing, but now I have the problem that I cannot reach the server. Is it also again this admin Apple thing? Maybe, or because it's so it says that the server cannot be reached, and I tried sometimes with when I replace it with Apple and then remove it, then it started to work again for some reason. But while testing, I had this. I still hope it belongs to the our testing database, and it's not a general problem. But while it's still loading, I can duplicate it and remove all the steps here so we can directly check the data, if the data is loading or not. Everything else is we can do afterwards. So this is just bare loading. Here only this. And now we can see if it works with the Apple password. If not, I remove it again and try again. Worked in test for me with the normal URL version, not with the MDX version.
I had to, I had some struggles with, connections with Power BI this morning as well. And I removed something, tried it again, set it to anonymous. It seems to sometimes switch it automatically.
Okay. Normally only when you do it for other sources in between. But this is still worth trying, but it still refuses to connect to this server. I don't think it's a question of MDX or not, but I cannot prove it right now, of course, without having a copy of the file, which I have, but I can get it. And when I removed the Apple again, it's something that helped me this morning. And then it surprisingly worked. I hope it's nothing that happens always. But the MDX query as it is works on your system.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
okay,
talking to the server. That server is
like always, it works on the system of the guy who created it.
of course. Now you talk to it, obviously.
And then, while it's loading, Christoph, I can come back to the refreshing part, because in Power BI you have the data set refresh, and when you use the import mod as I use to modify the queries in the import, then you have like the planned refreshing, and this refresh, if I just do the real-time refresh, actually I can do it. It's still the old version with the URL, and it works in the cloud, so it's not dependent from what I'm doing locally. So this refreshing, it imports all the data sources again in this Power BI data set. This is what it's also the philosophy of Power BI, that you have to everything you import in your model, and then you can slice and dice it. And it's not really common to like have some certain parameters that the front-end user can choose to rerun the query. It's possible with direct query data sources
But that's
like
only for SQL Server. And
SQL Server and Snowflake and some other database solutions, but not for web data
so if I
source.
use it for use Power BI to connect, that actually proves. It's another point on the list. What Hubert said earlier. It's not a replacement for TM1 for TM1 specific front end, because you had to use it for your for TM1 you have to pull all the data from your TM1 database into Power BI. Everything, every dimension, every cube, or at least every cube you need.
Yeah.
Correct?
Every cube you need, not every
Yeah.
cube, I think, but yeah.
And then, of course, you have to rebuild relations. And you lose stuff like data connections between cubes. You have in TM1 you have things like intercube rules where data from a cell in one cube is referenced in another cube, and that's a live connection between the cubes. So if you change the data in one cube, it's instantly change the new value is instantly shown in the other cube. So things like that you could not rebuild in Power BI, I think, because Power BI doesn't know the relation between those two cells.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that you can't express the rules to begin with, right? In any Power BI,
all kinds of business logic, actually.
But how does it work if you have Excel as a front end? Because I've seen several times, I've seen that Excel is actually used as a front end for TM1. And when you write back in Excel, it refreshes the TM1 database and then it pushes it back to Excel, actually.
Well, the data is not. There is actually a lot of. Well, there's actually multiple modes. Actually, there's at least nowadays 4 different Excel add-ins for TM1, or that work with TM1. 2 from IBM, 2 from partners. And but long story short, most of them do, apart from some special modes that actually just copy the result out. Most of them have a live connection in the back. So every time you refresh your sheet, you're actually getting the fresh data from TM1. If you type something in a cell, that cell value is immediately pushed to TM1. And then all the logic execution happens in TM1. And then when the sheet gets refreshed, it gets the fresh data from TM1 instantly.
Yeah. And if you insert a filter into your Excel report, you can change the data set that's retrieved.
Yeah.
By changing a background filter, it retrieves another data set. And only that one. And the first one is like tossed away.
Okay, and then you have some kind of plugin in Excel that is triggers all the stuff, because it's why I'm asking. It's always easy to say for me as a Power BI guy and for other Power BI consultants, replace Excel with Power BI. This is the way, like for proper reporting. And then I always think, okay, it has to be also possible for this use case, but now you deliver the question why it's not. But yeah, it still depends on a certain plugin. So of course, if you script a plugin for Power BI which pushes the data set back and then forces a refresh, you could do it, but with a lot of effort. And then
And
I
what's the
would ask,
benefit in the end?
why doing? Yeah, what's
Yeah,
the
what's the
benefit?
real
Then
benefit in the end?
just use TM1 because it's not the self-service,
Yeah.
easygoing reporting like you want to do in Power BI. It's kind of a custom solution with a lot of scripting that has Power BI still is kind of a front end, but
Yeah,
it's
Power
not
BI
the way
is the
Power
front end and
BI is
the database at the same time.
Yeah, you will
So
not be really satisfied with this
yeah,
solution.
that's why there's still value in there's a big value in the specific front ends for TM1, which have a direct connection, which allow you to filter based on and you only get a subset of your data, and which are real front ends and not like a hybrid. But another question which arises for me is, how much data can a Power BI report store? Because for TM1, Hubert, we discussed that before. Technically, there is no limit to the size of a TM1 server.
It's let's say if we've got customers that pushed it to 6 terabyte, if you would represent that same amount of data in a relational table, that would explode probably to 50, 60 terabytes. Whatever.
This is something that so Power BI is also an enterprise solution, so it is possible to store terabyte. I never did it, but of course you don't use like the one file solution as I use. Then you have a premium like premium space in Azure, and then you can separate your data, like make incremental refreshes and not refresh everything at one time as I do.
And what's the limit for the freemium model for the pre-desktop Power BI desktop version? I think it's 1 gigabyte.
I don't. I'm not. I need to. I would lie if I would say it seriously, but maybe you're right. But I'm not. I never reached this kind of limits. Like I used it with like 500 megabytes is no problem, and even then you have like millions of data normally. So, oh yeah, 1 gigabyte. Thank you, Michael. This is what community is for. And
But he said it's Pro.
yeah, this is the free. Yeah,
Okay,
okay, but
desktop is Pro.
Pro is kind of freemium because Pro you need to properly use Power BI, and
Realistically, I wouldn't
premium
expect.
per user is 100 gig. Great, thanks a lot, Michael. Here why I still refreshing the old version. I'm
But
this.
how is it? How many cells would that be? Just to compare it, is it comparable to 100 gigabyte of TM1 server or TM1 cube with 100 gigabyte, or is it?
Depends.
Yeah.
Depends on structure. I would typically say that in a you'd expect it depends on how you store it in the relational database as well. But
yeah, but is it stored in the? I thought. I don't know how Power BI stores it, but I thought it's a column-based and it's less. It takes up less space than a traditional relational table, so it's not comparable to a table in the SQL Server.
does it use columnar storage under the cover? That's fine. So in that respect, it wouldn't. So we store everything once as well, right? It's just that the cube data is using tries, which is very good for sparse data. Yeah, but it's apples and oranges we're comparing here, right? We're two completely different type of databases in that sense. So
yeah, I think the size is not the limit for me about Power BI, but more the use case why you should rebuild a working data model. in some
the
other
limit
tool.
is not being able to query a database directly under the covers.
Okay, now it's interesting, guys. While we were talking, I managed to, recreate my old copy with the URL as the basic, and this works with the refresh. So this was the one where I still have the old ones with the URL and the new version with the MDX. I will try it again, but
still, it's
then the MDX is the reason, and then we have some outcome that it's not so easy to pass MDX via M code. That would be also an output.
Yeah, and still it's not that it's MDX is useful because with that you are, as a Power BI developer, you are independent from the TM1 admin, because with MDX you can build your own queries, and if you're not using MDX you have to rely on pre-built views on the server, a bit like you have views on your SQL server compared to writing your own SQL statement. So MDX could be useful for using TM1 data to enrich your reports, but I think there's no real point in using parameters in your MDX, because as you said, to make clear the import mode, there's no value in filtering too much on your MDX.
Yeah, so I would keep with this because it obviously works, but just to show how easy it would be to create a parameter, it's really not the problem. So when I create a parameter for user, this is something I always need, and now admin is the user parameter, and then I can just replace my source string with the user when I have it here. This the admin, and I just need it to replace it with text to admin, and this is still the string part. Admin is the parameter. No, user is the parameter. I was even wondering why it's not in binary to text. And basic user and this one. I try.
This can't
If I not
work because the server has a password.
okay.
So
I also could store the password in parameter, and this is something it's very common when I use Power BI with APIs, that I just replace. I can replace the parameters in the service, and then I'm independent from the code. When I go here and just replace, I don't have any parameters here, obviously, in this data set. I'm sorry for hopping here. But here I have the parameters section and could replace this user parameter with another parameter as an admin. And here I can manage the connection and don't need to store it inside the code. So as we see, it still works with the parameter instead of the admin string.
You could use it to parameter. You could use all these parameters to store it in your web in this web application you just showed. To use there, for example, store there the MDX and the username, password, URLs, to make the report more.
More interactive, more scalable. If you have have to roll out for certain departments, but it's admin thing. It's not a user thing that the user can replace the query. It's still like a parameter that the administrators have to change. This is the real difference about this.
Artur,
So
can you go back, because your MDX request also has just admin in there for your authentication, and it has to have a password as well. So this cannot work. I'm guessing the other one is using cache data. And that's why it's slow probably, because it needs to time out everything. Because the server is there, and it responds instantly.
Okay, so then you think I can just add the password and then it would work? That would be at least a cool option.
Without the password, so.
Okay. But the password is Apple, right?
Apple, yeah.
And this is the one without this is the MDX version.
Yeah, just.
I can do it and we can still see if there are any questions. So when I add Apple here,
yeah.
But I tried it when I was off screen, but maybe we can do it.
You don't have more details about the error, because normally
not really. It's I think if server not found is quite yeah. It's not about the user, just that the server is not found. Yeah, but that's all. It's not uncommon, but it's still not working with the Apple, and here I just go to properties. It does not reverse me.
Copy that URL.
Yeah. So in browser it must work, I think.
Well, put HTTP in front of it, because otherwise it
okay, yeah.
doesn't work. HTTP. Yeah.
With the slashes.
/ yeah.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Who is it?
And then /API /v1 $metadata.
Mm-hmm. Which was the last one?
V1 for version 1.
Okay, V.
No, not TM1.
Not TM1.
Okay, sorry. Okay,
yeah,
already gone. Okay, so that's it.
V1.
I think V1, yes.
/
Okay. So I was too fast again. Okay, yes.
/ and then $metadata.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. This must deliver the data. Still waiting for this. But then, but this is the URL version. We know that this works. This is the MDX version, which is not working.
Goes back to cache data. Because you don't have a password in there either. And the server definitely doesn't allow you to come in without a password.
Okay, I could try it to delete the cache. Might work.
Guys, want to look at the clock?
Yeah.
So I think we are.
Yeah, we are almost ready. Sorry for the connection slowdown.
I want to see it as well. I want to see it with MDX, because I think with MDX, as I said, it's a cool part, because MDX gives you complete freedom as a power user to retrieve the TM1 data.
But
so
does
it's way more useful than just querying a native view.
But OData is also a single common standard that you can use. Why not using OData?
No, we are using OData. I said, as I said, the pre-built, predefined views in TM1, which are stored in TM1, you can retrieve those.
Yeah.
But then you are limited to the to how they are defined. TM1 administrator. And if you use MDX, you can customize the data slice you want to retrieve.
Now, but this is a common misunderstanding, right? So our REST API for TM1 is OData compliant, right? OData being the standard for the protocol and all that kind of stuff, right? But the data that is in cubes in TM1 specifically, right? You query using MDX as the query language, right? So think about it this way: you're connecting using UDC to a relational database, right? And you can ask anything and everything you want to know about that database using JDBC, and you're executing a query using SQL, right? In JDBC and ODBC and XML and ODBO and ODBC and all these other standards. It's all the same pattern here. There's a REST API. The REST API happens to be compliant with the OData standards, right? But the query language for the actual data is MDX. Again, mentioned, which is why I'm a little bit surprised that Power BI doesn't have built-in actual full-fledged support for it generically.
Microsoft and using DAX only.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
okay. So this is like then the outcome. It's also not working in the browser. I don't know if it's my fault, but I also can talk with you. So at least I cannot reach this server, and even in Power BI,
it should be online. Yeah.
Not stable now because the URL version is working. It's not extremely stable, but the most time I could refresh it.
The server, I just didn't execute in 10 milliseconds, so that's not. But obviously, it's local on my machine, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the normal use case wouldn't be that you have it
of course,
over the internet. You have it in a private network, and.
But even then, we've demonstrated recently, Christoph, that from Canada, pulling data from a government website in New Zealand, right, from within TI using a web request, OData compliant is less than 100 milliseconds, right? So it's like that shouldn't be the problem.
So of course, I will try to read it afterwards, and then I will deliver the outcome and post it in between of the video or in some LinkedIn post if it would work or not. But I think the main outcome was, as we have seen, you can get like the fact table and to a certain kind of the keys to the dimensions, and it makes sense to connect it to your dimensions and other systems to compare like accounts and in some public system with TM1, for example. But to get all the data model is like you can do it, of course, and you have not only one query but lots of queries like this. But you always have to think, why do you really need it for? And the Excel front end is not just Excel, it's a plugin that pushes it. You could do it with any other tool. You also could create your own TM1 front end when you code enough. And then, but you always have to ask what to use it for.
Don't get me wrong. I want to add some information from a TI database to Power BI. Go for it, right?
Yeah.
I think what we beautifully displayed, more or less, is that what we showed you today with displayed today with using the OData, the web request connection in Power BI. That no third-party tool which proclaims to connect TM1 to Power BI can do more. The limitations are the same for every third-party tool which is telling you it's connecting Power BI and TM1. They can't circumvent this problem. So not problem. This limitations of both tools, to put it that way. There's no magic. There's no magic that can happen between TM1 and Power BI that makes Power BI a proper front end for TM1.
Yes, and then we still have some, of course, open issue is the MDX one. I will test it till the end. Then we have one open issue, Hubert. You told us about closing the connection. Then we have to perform web action request. We didn't manage to do it now, but we can do it later. We can also do it in another session. Would be quite interesting if we can actually close the connections from Power BI. Should work because it's in a documentation. And one question that's just interesting for me. So, is there any documentation of the possible OData usage of TM1, or is it just because when I used in the string, it was just by you have told me select this and expand this and use this. Is it just the knowledge about the database and standard OData, or do you have
it's all standard OData. So
okay?
go to OData.org/documentation. You find anything and everything. And once you pull the dollar metadata from the TM1 service, you have effectively the full stack of anything and everything you can do with TM1. Now,
but it's very helpful to know the difference between a cube and a dimension.
Sorry?
It's very helpful to have some domain knowledge about.
Yeah, obviously. You need to know what TM1, like you need to know what a table is and a column in a table in a SQL database, right? You need to know what a dimension, a hierarchy, a number, etc. are in a multidimensional model. But again, that's the same as it is in Essbase, as it is in Microsoft Analysis Services, as it is in SAPBW, as it is in TM1. That's again not unique to TM1, right? So people that know dimensional models will very quickly understand, and people that have seen standards like ODBO, XMLA, etc. before.
For me, it's still straightforward. You have the cube, you have the view. If you have the view, so for now, it was working with the view, and then this is just OData and everything. What is actually name and what is unique name and everything. This is something you have to know from your database knowledge. This is not something that.
Actually, those are properties, and those are all documented in the metadata document.
Okay.
Okay. You can read that they exist, but of course you need to know what it means. What you get when you querying the unique name.
It does help if you know what TM1 is and how a model looks like. But if you've ever worked with TM1, then all this comes natural.
Okay, nice. And then one last question, I think quite interesting from Mark. Hello, Mark, the Tableau master. Is Excel and plugin still the go-to front-end for TM1? So would you recommend it, or is there something better, like a special front-end?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say yes and no, because yes, that's I think why TM1 is so successful, because of its deep integration into Excel. That's why people love TM1, because it is where they are, where controlling finance people are on a daily basis. They rely on Excel. TM1 is right there with them, so that's why yes. But obviously we have alternatives. We have IBM's own planning analytics workspace. We have tools like Applico UX or Vitivity Mosaic and all the other, which Excel cubes, which allow, let's say, different approaches to visualizing the data, with dashboards, with self-service component, with standardized reporting, IBCS reporting. So there are a lot of things. That's the beauty of TM1. You have the options, you have different options for visualizing your data. So, but now it's your turn, Hubert.
Yeah, so TM1. So recent numbers show that more than 60% of our users actually still only uses Excel. I wasn't surprised by that number. It's over 60% of people that only use Excel still to interact with TM1. But that's gradually changing also because of TM1, the functional database technology, but IBM positioning planning analytics, obviously, which comes with planning analytics workspaces with big front end. Integration with Cognos Analytics, right, is also an IBM product which a lot of people, especially bigger organizations, use. And Planning Analytics for Excel, which is the newer version of our Excel But as Christoph says, there's actually a ton of products out there. Some are very well known, like Applicable UX, but even for developers, like Arc, also from QPython, right, is a very popular one amongst a lot of TM1 fans. That have been out there. They're all based on using, at the end of the day, the REST API to TM1. So yeah, there's a lot of options. In the way I look at it, it is a database like there is so many database technologies out there who have so many integration points with many products. And don't forget, there is partners that are actually integrating TM1 with Power BI and have specific things to it. There's, again, QPython that has shown that with their TM1 Pi, where it's a huge community around TM1 Pi. Which is the Python library around TM1, which in the back obviously uses again Elastic. And there's all kinds of things, including integration with Power BI, but also kinds of ML work
And we see the rise of different wrappers for the REST API. We have recently discovered one in R, and a couple of people at Deutsche Bahn use Perl for it as a wrapper around the REST API, and we have C#. A lot of people use C# to build custom applications around the TM1 REST API.
Yeah, our friends from Allapline do something like that as well.
Yeah,
and so there's definitely many.
There's one problem which project which got stalled a bit about an integration to Visual Studio Code. Also very cool, but it's on hold right now.
There's even an ODBC connector for TM1, so you can set stuff up and use views. And again, if you have the right granularity of data, you can expose those as a proper ODBC endpoint out there.
Arthur, you're muted.
Yeah, because there was a ship here. And this is something that these are custom solutions and plugins. And of course, if you need to work professional with it, you need it. What we have shown today is that you can also use it with standard Power BI possibilities, but you still have to keep in mind that Power BI is not a planning solution. This is something that's also important for me, that only because you do something in Excel, you shouldn't do it in Power BI. Of course, Power BI is better for reporting, for analytics, but not for planning. And so many people are thinking that you need to plan in Power BI because it's better than Excel. And because it's better than Excel in one case, it's not better than Excel in all the cases. This is something I really need to say, because you will not be satisfied with Power BI as a planning solution. Without plugins and special software, you always can have it. It's an integrative system. Other tools are too.
And I can tell you that over the years, I've seen many different flavors of planning applications written for and using TM1 in the background, right? And trust me, they don't all look like a sheet, right? A plan doesn't. One leader at one of the biggest companies that uses TM1 once said to me, not every plan starts with an effing sheet, right? That is true. And if you then see what some of these companies have done, you don't even know you're interacting with, TM1 or whatever. Right?
That's the beauty of it. Yeah. Definitely.
And they actually put the planning into the hands of people that have no idea that what they're doing is actually contributing to a plan, right?
Yeah.
By just asking users some simple questions, having them enter some pieces of some numbers for answering certain questions. So questionnaire kind of style, they're contributing to a plan, and they wouldn't know that it's actually a model and that there is some more technical people are looking into sheets that actually consolidate the data that they're actually contributing. So there's many flavors of planning applications. I don't think Power BI and Excel are the only ones, nor the ones that we come up with. There's very specific one. It depends very much on the use case, what you would use. But truth be told, most people use Excel.
Okay, so then we are already over time. So thank you both, and yeah, I still will follow the open issues and hope to see you again to wrap all the thing up. So thanks Hubert for the continuous development of the OData, OData possibilities of TM1. It's quite cool that when you use open standards and when everything can be connected, because this is my effort to like prove that everything can be connected to Power BI. Even if the second question is if everything makes sense there. It does not, but it's a tool that you can connect to everything actually. You don't need to create custom connectors if you don't need them. Okay, yeah, and then any one of you, any last words? So otherwise, thanks again to all the viewers. And yeah, just keep following us for more information, and maybe we can then finish some M code then that everyone can use very easily.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Okay, bye.